Frollo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frollo app is the one for you. The Frollo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. All users on Frollo are verified, putting our user safety first always. The Frollo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you are looking for. To download Frollo, search for Frollo, Frollo, on the App or Google Play Store, or go to www.frollo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon. Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frollo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox, that I made through Frollo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Nawal Houghton, your divorce coach. Nawal, thank you so much for coming on the Frollo podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to get an opportunity to chat properly. I've been keeping an eye on the amazing work that you're doing, which is all so relevant to, the Frollo community, as you well know. So I'd love to start with a bit about your own personal story and your single parent journey and really what led you to create, this amazing work that you're doing.
Right. So you can find my story on my website as well, just for those that want to take their time to read it. Married, or met my now ex-husband at work. I was very young. I was 22, in fact. And then what ensued, what I now know as love bombing. And sort of 4 years later, I find myself a stepmother to two small children, and married at 26. And, my story may be sort of a little bit different to some other people's stories, but what ensued was just an abusive relationship. So I found myself in a situation not able to recognise red flags, minimising behaviour. And after nearly 10 years, the demise of our marriage by my discovery of an affair while we were in Australia on a family holiday. And I am a lawyer, accredited mediator, and I found the divorce process with a toxic individual incredibly hard. It was mind-blowing. The minefields of trickery, delay, hidden assets, etc., was pretty frightening. And I kind of identified that there was this gap in sort of resources and services that are out there that just didn't deal with how do I manage a very tricky person in the divorce and separation process. Divorce separation process itself is quite tricky. There can be some ups and downs, but we essentially try and do it as amicably as possible. There'll be some instances, more often than not, over children and money, the two big things that we kind of tend to disagree on. But hopefully, two people can come together and get through the process as easily as possible. And I just discovered that wasn't my route. So post-divorce, and because I divorced quite young, my children were 8 months and 3 years old, I then became sort of this hub of resource that people would say, I have a friend that is divorcing someone quite tricky, or I have an aunt, a friend, whoever, a sister. You've got to talk to Nawal, you've got to talk to Nawal. And so I found myself in this position where I was, assisting people, breaking down the legal process, giving them the sort of guidance that I had learned along the way, all the kind of issues that you can have when you are divorcing a toxic individual. And I was doing that for a few years, just sort of working as an in-house lawyer, and on my days off, sort of giving this sort of guidance and support as a coach. And then COVID hit. And because I was able to be on social media on my days off, I was able to kind of give a lot more content. And with, social media is so visual, it's about listening, it's about connecting to people. And then it just kind of, blew up. My business kind of escalated, and people were just like, oh my goodness, everything that you say resonates with me. Thank goodness I can hear someone talk about the issues that I am having. I felt like I was going crazy. I feel like you completely understand what I'm talking about. And as I built that up over COVID, I then decided to, big girl pants, and decided to launch it as my business. And here we are. My own business, Your Divorce Coach. Very grateful to be able to helping sort of men and women navigate that divorce process when dealing with a tricky individual.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and also kind of your journey and the inspiration behind your business, which I know is helping so many people. The narcissist thing comes up so often in the single parent community. It's one thing that we notice anytime we create content around narcissism on Frollo. There's such a strong wave of people who who kind of pipe up and say, oh my God, this is me, this is my experience, I feel seen, and it's scary, isn't it? Because it's one of these things that you can feel so alone in, and almost like probably people who are at the receiving end of narcissism are used to being gaslit and invalidated and all of that. So to, I suppose, feel seen and supported, is absolutely crucial to, sanity, mental health, healing, kind of getting through it. So what would you say are the, I guess, warning signs if someone's kind of going through a separation with someone who they think might be a narcissist? Are there any certain signs to
So
tell?
I get asked this a lot. It's kind of what are your top tips for spotting a narcissist? And the word narcissist is such a buzzword at the moment. I mean, certainly sort of 10 years ago when I was divorcing, it was unheard of. You wouldn't really find that much content on the Instagram, whereas here Instagram wasn't even in existence back then, but I'm talking Google. You wouldn't have found it back then, or if you did, it wasn't sort of that much information. And here we are now in a situation where, type it in and there's just a plethora of kind of resources. And what I tend to sort of say is narcissism it's on a spectrum, and I'll give you some sort of hints and tips as to, am I divorcing someone narcissistic or toxic? There are labels out there, and it's not that it doesn't matter what label that you give it. Suffice to say that you are dealing with someone difficult, someone toxic, and you're having some issues, you need some guidance with that. There's an array of personality disorders that we can assign to loads of people, and you need to be a psychotherapist to be able to talk to that individual, to be able to highlight whether they are narcissistic or not. And I talk about narcissism on a spectrum. So we all have, to some degree, healthy narcissism. It's the reason we wash our hair, we brush our teeth, we wear nice clothes, we take care of ourselves. And that wonderful, healthy narcissism is really beneficial. And it's when that narcissism starts to sort of move up that spectrum to the point where we're starting to impact the life of another. So we are starting to use things like control, or minimizing, or mocking, or gaslighting in order to control an individual so that they are there solely for your purpose. And as we move up that spectrum and it starts to impact the life of another, that's when the degree of narcissism starts to get more dangerous, as it were. Because you can have an individual with full-blown NPD, or you can have those that have some narcissistic traits. The key thing is, to what degree do these traits affect my divorce or separation or my, process? But not only that, am I with someone that is potentially narcissistic? And because a lot of sort of my clients come to me actually quite unaware. They think that they might be in a situation, and we kind of unpick that relationship. And a lot of them still struggle to deal with, oh my goodness, I think actually I am in an abusive relationship, but I've been in it for so long. I've minimized it for so long for survival reasons. We have children. I don't know what the world would look like. So I'm just going to some degree, sweep it under the carpet and hope for a better day. And maybe that's just what marriage is, or that's maybe just what the relationship is, and things will get better. So kind of top tips around, does this person have some sort of narcissistic traits would be the inability to have empathy for whatever you're going through, minimizing your feelings and your emotions, control, whether that be where you're going, what you're doing, who you're seeing, control over finances. It could be anything from giving you only an allowance, criticizing what you're spending, to only giving you a credit card so that you don't have any actual cash, not giving you access to joint accounts, not knowing how much your spouse earns, not knowing sort of the mortgage amounts. They're in control sort of quite a lot. Keeping you isolated from friends and family. Controlling what you're wearing. It can be ragey, sort of, this temper, walking on eggshells. You never quite know what temperament you're going to get from your partner when you kind of go home. Total lack of responsibility, inability to accept that they may have had an impact on something that may have happened in the relationship or at home. The sense of grandiose, they are very important. They desperately need attention all the time. I describe it as akin to, imagine a water bottle that's got holes in it, and doesn't matter how much you fill it, that water's always kind of leaking. So you're on this continuous kind of journey of just giving them loads and loads and loads of attention. We often find that a relationship breaks down when there are children that have arrived in the relationship. Your attention is diverted. You are no longer giving them that attention that they need. So then they start to devalue you, they start to disrespect you, the abuse starts to escalate, because literally they're like children having a tantrum because you're not giving them what they deserve is kind of absolute attention. Depending on the type of narcissist, there's a whole sort of catalogue of different varying types, from overt to covert. Covert being the more insidious, passive-aggressive. Victim mentality might give you sort of the silent treatment, abandon you, completely withdraw from the relationship. Comments like, ooh, that's an odd dress to wear. And maybe when you've lost some weight, or, maybe if you sort of did your hair, you might look a bit better. This sort of very passive minimizing and dismissing of you, making you feel just not very nice about yourself. To sort of malignant narcissists, those that rage, are physically and verbally abusive, and take a bit of a pleasure. There is a real sick pleasure out of causing you pain and seeing you suffer. Fundamentally, that brings actually a narcissist a lot of comfort. It makes them feel better to see when they are in control and visually in control, and it kind of builds their very low self-esteem. One of the biggest sort of points actually that people miss about narcissists is they actually have incredibly low self-esteem, low self-worth. They don't have a developed sense of shame, i.e. they're stuck in that shield of shame as children, i.e. unable to understand that we progress from doing something bad to feeling bad, making an apology, and then we go through it. They're stuck in that sense of, I am ashamed of who I am and what I represent, and that there's sort of a big emotional development that hasn't occurred in their childhood for them to be stuck in shame, which is why they create this fake persona. A lot of my clients often say who they are at home and who they are in public, two completely different people, and that is done on purpose. That is all about the persona that they project to the outside world, so that you again look like this crazy person when you try and describe their behavior. So maybe some of those hints and tips or description of behaviors might resonate with some of the audience today.
Yeah, for sure. That's all so insightful. And I'm just wondering, can a narcissist be reformed, or have you ever known of it to happen?
Yeah, this is again another sort of big question. If we go to counselling, can they change? I'm a firm believer of change. I don't see how that's not possible. I think there are many camps. I think the firm, there is a big camp of, fundamentally, if we genuinely understand that a narcissist is a personality disorder, it is who they are, then you can't change who you are. There are some narcissists that potentially can understand their diagnosis, try and make things better, because narcissists are not self-reflective, by the way. Getting a narcissist to counselling is one of the hardest things to do, because they don't believe that there's anything wrong with them. That would require them to look within, and that kind of attacks the shame aspect that they feel. So there are some that can identify their behaviour, work super hard at trying to modify, but you can't change who they are. It's who they are. It's that person. It's a bit like saying you are fundamentally someone that just doesn't like shopping. You just don't. It's just not who you are. You might sort of help a friend and go occasionally, but you are just not that person. Or you're not someone that likes to go to the gym. You might sort of dabble in it sometimes, and you can come in and out, but fundamentally who you are is someone that's just not going to do that. And that's really understanding that it's not some sort of passive diagnosis that can be remedied. It really is a personality type caused from either having a narcissistic parent, not having their emotional safety needs met as a child, or there's been a trauma event that's happened in their life that's caused this kind of development of the requirement to build a persona because they feel unlovable. They don't feel that they can be loved, so they have to create this new person because who they are ashamed of.
Wow. And why do some people, because I know that sometimes people feel that they attract, that they're, a magnet for narcissists.
Yeah.
So how does that work? And how can people say, single parents listening to this podcast who maybe have, are co-parenting with a narcissist and thinking about dating again, or they are dating again and they're unsure about how to kind of read the room or be more assertive, why are some people
more
susceptible?
attracted? Yeah. This is kind of it fundamentally. There is a sort of deep connect. In fact, I've got a blog on my website if anyone's interested, and I name it the Narcissist and Codependency Dance. And it's a dance where they're forever together dancing and they don't release. And the fundamental principles are based on the fact that a narcissist is all about seeking validation by getting attention. Okay, so they don't like who they are. They don't feel very good. But if I get loads and loads of attention, it kind of validates who I am and I feel better about myself. The reverse of that with a codependence, we're talking people pleasers, super empaths, people with so low self-esteem also, and low self-worth. Those are sort of the common similarities actually between a narcissist and a codependent, which is why a lot of people sort of say, am I narcissistic? But the codependent also seeks validation, but they feel validated when they give. So if I do something nice, I'm a good person then. If I am very thoughtful towards you, or I go above and beyond, if I sacrifice my own needs and wants to give to you, I have validated my existence, which then you can understand why it fits perfectly well with the narcissist. The narcissist takes and the codependent gives, and they're both satisfying that fundamental hole that they have within them. So they're permanently kind of connected. So a lot of this work with the codependent, super empath, people pleaser is unconscious. So if we have been in a narcissistic abusive relationship, I always tend to say that counselling is definitely something that I would entertain, because we need to analyse where this tendency to be attracted to those in which we feel we are seeking that validation from comes from. Is it something in our childhood? Is it something that's missing within us? Is it generally about our self-esteem, that instead of being able to say, well, actually, no, you don't meet my emotional needs here, and therefore this isn't the right relationship, and all I'm finding myself is that I'm just giving, whereas I should be happy within myself. So it's about really analysing our own behaviour. It's looking introspectively at us, who we seem to be attracted to. Do we have boundaries? Honestly, do we have boundaries? Are we able to implement those boundaries? Can we notice a red flag in a potentially abusive relationship, even if it's the end? That classic, 3 weeks of dating and they tell you that they love you. You cannot love someone. You don't know someone within 3 weeks. How do you have that ability to kind of stand and just go, that is not right. That's not something that can happen. That's not that's a healthy comment. That is a potential red flag, and sort of pull back a little bit? Or do we get sort of enveloped in that relationship because we think, oh, brilliant, you're going to validate me. I feel loved because you love me. And that makes me feel better. Again, filling that hole. So it's really having the ability to look at our own behavior and decide whether we are in a better place to have a stable, healthy relationship.
That makes complete sense. Rebecca Cox and I just brought out our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, recently. And that's one of the things in the dating chapter that we really highlight is, you know, being ready to date, because it's just so risky to not have kind of done the work on yourself, you know, where you're at the point of, you know, this, you know, navigating dating as in I'm ready, I feel I am whole as I am, you know, and be able to make kind of considered choices and not just
to dive in. And it's highly likely that if you've been in a narcissistic or abusive relationship previously without having done the work, you are going to dive straight into another one, and it might look kind of completely different on the outside, because all narcissists are slightly different, right? The fundamentals that they operate in the same way, but each one is unique in their own way, which is why when I work with my clients, I profile every narcissist, because you might sort of bundle them up in a covert, overt, but they have their own sort of little nuance, and that particular nuance is how they'll direct their sort of divorce. But if you have been in an abusive relationship, haven't done the work, it is highly likely that you will head towards another abusive relationship, which is why it's so important to kind of do that unconscious work, right? Because we're doing these things. We consciously think, no, you're totally different to my last partner. You don't do this and they did that. I think you're just definitely different. Whereas the unconscious part of our brain, if they are abusive, is going, oh, I recognise this really horrible, shitty behaviour. I like this. It's making me feel
familiar.
It's familiar. It makes me feel safe. And so I am unconsciously attracted to it, which is why the work needs to be done about really understanding what is the type of person that you are attracted to and why. And really unpicking that. And that does require, you know, doing that work with a therapist, and really, you know, it's not something that we absolutely work on ourselves, build our self-esteem, self-care, look after ourselves, build those boundaries. But if we're really talking about, I think I still am attracted to a certain type and I'm not quite sure why, and I'm fearful that I might do it again, I'm always a proactive counselling. Go dig your past, figure out your tendencies, because ultimately it's the best gift that you can give you and give yourself. And by the way, you know, they don't walk around with a sign on their heads, right? They don't walk around with, I am narcissistic, you know, and you go, oh, right, okay, fine. It's highly likely that even those that have done the work will unfortunately meet another narcissistic individual. The work really is about, if you have the ability that once you have seen a red flag to kind of go, whoa, okay, no, I've seen it and I'm going to leave it. That's really the thing, you know, to say, how do I prevent myself from ever meeting anyone narcissistic ever again is near impossible. You can't do that. What you can do is give yourself the tools so that should you, we don't even have to be romantic. It can be in a work environment, it can be a friend, you know, it can be any environment, any social environment. But the fact is that you have equipped yourself with the resources, with the knowledge, with the ability to identify the behavior so that you can then exit safely. And that really is the key. It's not about, I don't ever want to meet someone narcissistic, is if I do per se, I know what to do and I know how to kind of pull out of that potential relationship.
Absolutely. And exactly as you've said, it's kind of recognizing that maybe some of these things that feel familiar aren't necessarily healthy. And it's kind of taking a pause and really, and I think that's what a lot of us single parents, you know, I think it's worth doing, is really kind of getting clear on it's an opportunity to really get clear on what has not served us well in previous relationships. It's such an opportunity to do that, instead of just kind of putting the blinkers on, kind of blocking our ears and walking, blindfold into the fire again.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it is a great opportunity to do some work and feel more empowered. And in terms of co-parenting with a narcissist, which I know there are a lot of people who will be in that situation, and you'll know going through the courts and the divorce process can be incredibly stressful, and it's stressful anyway, but then if you're dealing with a narcissist, it's on another level stressful. And I know that some people honestly feel that I've spoken to who have been through it, they feel like it's almost broken them. And I'm just wondering what your experience is of, I guess, what are the things maybe that narcissists, what are some of the tricks and games that they play to try and make things more tricky.
So I think if we're talking about children specifically, there's an array of tricks that they'll play sort of in finances. But if we veer towards that sort of co-parenting child aspect, which always hits at the very heart, they're our children. It's so emotive. You'll often find that one of the key things is the narcissist will weaponize children insofar as suddenly the narcissist that barely paid any attention to the child suddenly wants 50-50. I mean, that's just such a classic line now. And I think anyone listening to this will just be like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I've heard of that. It's happened to me. They're asking 50-50 despite the fact that they work a full-on job, have never been able to kind of help with children. If anything, used to berate me when I used to ask for help, because they used to say that they were the main income earner and how could I possibly ask them for help, because then they're needing to concentrate on the family. And they'll go for that 50-50 in an attempt to kind of destabilize you, frighten you, in the hope that you might shift on finances. You often find that the narcissist at work in divorce and separation is very much around the finances and children. And they're weaponizing both in the hope that, you'll give on something if they apply pressure. So if they are very centered around finances, they want to protect that pension. They don't want to give you any spousal maintenance, an array of things that they just don't want to give you. They'll weaponize children, fundamentally knowing that perhaps you are a parent that is so frightened about the children not living with you. The concept of 50-50 you feel would not be in the children's best interest, but they are still pushing forward. You've got legal fees just, escalating. And they push the pressure there in the hope that you give up on finances. So it's that classic sort of playoff. Then you've suddenly got the narcissist playing Disney dad. They're very attentive. They're going to school, plays, parents' evening, when they've never been interested at all. And, it's just that continue, and even if it's relocating, thinking that they actually should be the main resident parent, false allegations about your mental health or your inability to care for the children. There'll be false allegations about domestic abuse. There's just any kind of, I call it grenade dropping. They'll just throw bombs any which way possible. And there's also the manipulation of the children, parental alienation, winning children onto their side. You'll often find that children that transition back to the other parent are met with a lot of abuse, whether that's because the child has to be on super, super good behavior with the other parent and then it unleashes to that parent, or because it's parental alienation. They're being told passive aggressive tales, very insidious manipulation, so that when they come back to the other parent, they're quite dismissive, quite rude, treat them badly, because they're getting everything that they want from this one parent. So it's kind of like winning sides. There's really an array of different tactics that can be used.
Yeah, and you can understand why some people feel like they are at breaking point so often.
Yes,
it's like one thing being a single parent, that's challenging enough, and so, but then also navigating life, trying to either go through the court process or co-parenting with a narcissist.
Well, you can't actually co-parent. You can't actually co-parent with a narcissist. You don't co-parent, you parallel parent at best. but more often than not, they counter-parent.
Yeah.
So you're forever in a type of minefield. And again, it really does depend on the type of narcissist. And there are those that are so, it'll be a moment of quiet and then suddenly they want them to go to a different school, or, it'll be something about religion, anything to sort of create that chaos. And we have to sort of remind ourselves, why is the chaos being created? Because it's attention, because it's supply, because it's punishment for not being with them anymore. It's them saying, your life is awful without me, you should have stayed with me. Or if they've discarded you, you should have been a better wife, husband, and this is your punishment for not being who I needed. But that creation of the chaos and the noise, whether they're spending money legally or not, is supply, because supply is not just adoration and what can I do for you and can I be there for you. It's also negative supply, which is the noise, the chaos, the stress, the emotion, the emails, the text messaging. Why are you doing this? This is very stressful. It's impacting everybody. That in itself is attention. It's attention from them in some form.
So then what are the coping strategies for people? I know about grey rock. Is that something that you...
Yeah, I mean, my clients know this. Grey rock, yellow rock, purple rock, again, there isn't this one blanket way of dealing with a particular narcissist. There just isn't, because there's, like I said, they all have their particular nuances, because it's all fundamentally based on the manner in which they grew up, on the relationship. The way that they act with you and how you acted with them will be completely different to them with someone else and how they're acting with them. All right. It's just so that the intricate nuances are quite different. That's why it's so important to profile the type of narcissist that you have. But generally speaking, the coping mechanisms are boundaries is the number one thing, is that ability to give yourself the self-care that you need so that you have a boundary, which means if you do this, this will happen. But it actually means implementing that boundary. And I have this discussion with my clients a lot of the time. It's not enough to say, if you continue to talk to me in that way, I won't be, I will no longer communicate with you. Or if you continue to kind of abuse my telephone by ringing me after hours, I will no longer answer your calls, or I'll have to block you. But it's whatever the consequence is, right? You actually have to do it. It's not enough to say I will and then not. Because all you're teaching the narcissist then is, there he or she goes again, saying they're going to do something when they don't. So it's about not just implementing a boundary, but a real boundary and following through, just like with a child. Okay, so when you tell that child, if you do that again, I'm taking the toy off, you actually do take the toy away. Same thing with a narcissist. They are children. Okay, they are actually toddlers. Emotionally, they're not fully developed. So when you are implementing that boundary, you follow through the consequence, which is why when you set up that consequence, make it a realistic one that you will actually implement. It's also safeguarding the manner in which you're communicating. I would keep everything on email or use an app, just sort of making sure that those communications are to the point and all about the children. Don't sort of be emotive. Narcissist likes nothing more than, I call it a shit sandwich. I'm sure some of you might have heard this terminology before, where, they're like, oh, it's just so sad, I wish we could get on. This is a victim and a narcissist. And then they give you and by the way, this is what I'm doing. I'm totally changing the schedule. Oh, wouldn't it be good if we can just sort this out? It's kind of deliver this news right in the middle of something at the worst time when you don't have the children. So you're trying to relax, I know, a weekend off, and they deliver you this absolute bombshell so that instead of you being able to recoup, you're in this whirlwind and you never get to kind of survive. I would also deal with your team. Don't be so involved with their family and their friends. Divorce and separation does bring about a sort of a division of people, and having your team and those that you can kind of go to is really, really, really important. And understand, and just taking some time to respond as well when you're communicating with the narcissist. This desire or anxiety that we have within us to kind of immediately respond just in case something bad might happen is sort of quite strong within us. And just being, the best parent that you can be for yourself with your children, and trying to kind of give yourself that distance as well is kind of really, really key as well. And just understand your plane, keep your lane, as it were. It kind of, these answers really do fundamentally kind of really do depend on the type of individual that you're dealing with.
Yeah, what I've seen, and this is why I think this episode is going to be hugely helpful to anyone who has experienced this kind of narcissism, or maybe wasn't even aware that they are, and and maybe this will kind of clear that up for them. But what we've seen with some of the content that we've put out there about narcissism, or is that people think, oh wow, oh, like even with the term parallel parenting, or that's what you have to do with a narcissist, or as you put it, what was the other thing you said?
Well, they counterparent.
Counterparenting, yeah. And I think just even for some people realizing that there is certain ways that people have to kind of navigate.
Well, that's exactly it. It's about navigating that person. And that's why, my services as a divorce coach, a large proportion of it is not just about navigating my clients through the divorce and separation process. It's learning how to manage the narcissist, because that consent order for children will come. That financial order will come. What are you left with? You're left with still this individual, if you have children, learning how to manage them. And that are the key things, which is why I started off with communication. Communication is one of the key things in which you have to absolutely nail to give yourself that boundary and that space, minimizing the telephone contact, minimizing the face-to-face, where they can really have this pressure over you if we are not robust enough, if we're still, low self-esteem, haven't rebuilt ourselves after an abusive kind of relationship. So, absolutely. It's really learning how to manage them as you have these children until they reach an age where you don't have to communicate with them again, ever. It's learning how to cope with that person. It's one of the key skills that I teach my clients.
Amazing. Well, speaking of which, I would love you to share with our listeners how people can find you.
Oh, thank you. Instagram is sort of one of my main platforms. I give daily stories and content and reels on there. So that is at your_divorce_coach. I'm also on Facebook. I'm making a real effort to kind of be on there. There's already 2 existing groups on there at Your Divorce Coach, one for men and one for women, only separate. It's just a group that you can go in, seek guidance, ask for help from other people. I pop in there sometimes and answer some questions. It's a real hub of resource and knowledge from other people that have been in the same place as you. There's also my website. That's www.yourdivorcecoach.org.uk. There's an array of resources on there. You can book a free 15-minute discovery call if you wanted to work with me or see how my services can help. You can join my newsletter. That comes out from time to time. I don't bombard people. It's nothing worse than just getting newsletters every day. Just with some helpful sort of content around that. Again, you can sign up either in the link tree in my Instagram. The link tree is that's link underneath the photograph, or on my website. And then lastly, something new that I have created, it's about 2-3 months now, is a membership on Patreon. So that is a membership. It's only £13 a month. Which I calculated is probably a glass and a half of wine at a bar, is where I provide audio, video, documents, how to fill in a C100, prohibitive steps order, child arrangements, finances, Form E, Form A, all of this kind of really helpful resource available to you to dive in whenever you need it. I upload on a weekly basis. Just yesterday, in fact, I uploaded how to draft a position statement. So it's really useful for those that are self-representing, but also really useful for those that are going through the divorce and separation process, looking for that knowledge. I touch upon children, what kind of schedules for child arrangements, you and the narcissist, talking about narcissism in a deeper format, all the different types of kind of elements. Also, what did I do yesterday that's on my membership, that's coming actually? how do I know that I'm not the narcissist, which is a big topic, a big question we sort of ask ourselves when we've been in a toxic relationship. And there's sort of 5 questions that I put on there for you to ask yourself. Another one was recently identifying a covert narcissist. There's lots and lots of different types of content.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. That is all so useful and so valuable.
Thank
Love
you.
the sound of your membership and all of that guidance as well with those who are self-representing, because again, another really overwhelming part of the process.
Legal costs. Yeah, legal costs.
Exactly.
Really difficult, really, really hard. And I've definitely noticed an increase in the number of people that are self-representing or that actually do a lot of the work. I do a lot of work with my clients. I am a solicitor and accredited mediator. And then they just seek direct access barristers. That's a way of also controlling our costs as well, which is a real topic, a real difficult topic, especially, in the current economic climate.
Exactly. And really excited I know that you're going to be doing another meetup for the Frollo community, which is amazing. Yeah, the feedback has been brilliant.
Yes, so I love nothing more than answering questions, actually. I just feel like, if you've got a direct question, just answer, and you just feel, knowledge is power. That really is kind of the key thing when we are divorcing someone very, very tricky. And the more knowledge that you have, the more empowered and the more confident you feel about tackling it.
Exactly. And that's why I think people have just been so grateful for your meetups and your guidance and just giving that steer. Yeah. So we'll figure out, by the time this episode goes live, we'll figure out when your meetup is going to be, and we can pop it in the show notes. Thank you so much. It's been so lovely to chat with you, and well done with all of the brilliant work that you're doing.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I hope that listeners found it useful. So until the next Q&A.
Exactly. Thanks so much. And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favour to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frollo podcast and give us a rating and review? This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frollo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frollo.com or follow us on Instagram at Frollo app. And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.